Thank you to the Garden Conservancy, San Francisco, New York offices, Emily, Rennie, and Jenny for continued program and support of this series.
A lot of the photos you see in this lecture are mine. If they're David's, I'll let you know. You'll be able to tell because they're better. But this question is really the basis of this entire book project. And just to kind of give you some statistics, you may know this, but 80% of the cut flowers sold in the U.S. are imported, which is crazy, especially in a state like California, where this was one of the major cut flower growing sources for the whole country. But there were small cut flower farmers supplying in greenhouses, supplying, every major market in the country. There are no 600 cut flower farms in the U.S., and that number is growing because there's a lot of young entrepreneurial growers. There's a lot of people doing stuff that they're not even on the U.S. That figure's from the USDA. Some people are so small, they're not even on the USDA kind of radar. But the revenues did increase 4% from 2010 to 2011. So I feel hopeful, like maybe the pendulum has swung a little bit, and now we're seeing, which is the perfect time to send out to publish a book about this topic, because people are now, just like they cared about their food, they're now caring about where the flowers come from. And then the last figure about farmers market growth, also a USDA figure. Of course, farmers markets meant in they have edibles, but every farmers market you go to has one person selling flowers at least. So there's a little bit of an indication to me that if farmers markets are growing, farmers selling flowers at those markets are also growing. The California Cut Flower Commission is really ahead of everybody else in the country because of the funding source that California has. These agricultural cooperatives like the avocado growers, and I don't know what else there are, the date growers, but the Cut Flower Commission they basically have a fee that the farmers pay into a pool to market California flowers. So they're able to do things like this labeling program, which you see maybe on mixed bouquets at supermarkets. I think they have an 85% of California ingredient to call it California grown. Their commission did a survey nationwide. Do you know where your flowers come from? 85% of consumers did not know. The follow-up question, and this was a couple years ago, the follow-up question was, well, if you were offered an option to buy California flowers, would you? 55% said yes. This is Diane Succulent. She's our cover girl. She's the flower farmer on the cover of the book. And you can come look at it, or we can pass copies around. It's two women in a field, and it's Diane, the farmer, talking with Stacy, the floral designer. And that conversation is also really important, because how many of you have floral designers in your life who go to the wholesale market and just buy whatever's there? They don't even know who brings flowers. And hopefully that'll change. And I just want to point out these amazing dahlias that Diane has. See these, how enormous they are? That is called Cafe au Lait. Some of you may know that variety. And is the hottest dahlia color in the bridal market right now. And she's, after last year, and she sold every stem, she planted 2,000 more dahlias in the field, just 7 acres. And they were almost all pre-ordered, like spoken for by designers who knew she was growing and saying, my brides want that. So, it's kind of interesting. You follow fashion colors. That's sort of that, I don't even know what to call that color. It's kind of, Cafe au Lait kind of explains it, but it's kind of pink, it's kind of champagne, it's sort of
mauve.
Mauve, yes, kind of blush. So that's sort of interesting that Diane is smart enough to say, what is the market going to want? I'll grow it. Instead of just, anyone who sells plants should be doing that. So number one, living in the season. And the seasonality, I think, is something that I came up against with the publishing market, saying you really can't do local and seasonal in many parts of the country because, what do you have to work with? You have twigs and conifers. So this is my answer to that. I started November 1st of last year making an arrangement every week. I call it the 52 Weeks of Local Flowers Project. And I wanted to see what I could make out of my own garden and from local farmers. I live in Seattle now. So Seattle is a little bit less perfect than here. This is perfect. The Bay Area. Or the coast where Robin is. It's all pretty perfect. But Seattle is definitely zone 8, so it's not like Michigan or something. But this is my winter landscape. So lots of beautiful colored twig dogwoods, I just put that in because that's a photo from the Washington Park Arboretum, and if they have a winter garden. So, you know, I say to people, if you don't know what's beautiful in winter, go to the Arboretum and see what bark is looking like, what the berries are looking like. Those are floral ingredients. I got asked to do this workshop for a garden club in Seattle on January 6th. So what do? I mean, I was just like, oh my God, I gotta come up with something. And this is what I came up with. And I was pretty excited. And Andrea, a lot of the stuff is from Lorraine's garden. I have a friend with Lorraine Edwards-Forkner, who's now the editor of Pacific Horticulture magazine. I rated her garden, so the oak leaf hydrangea and the all the beautiful witch hazel. And the honeysuckle, the evergreen honeysuckle from her garden. But there's a cuba in here. There's the Corsican hellebores, and I think there might be some camellias hidden in there somewhere. But anyway, I was pretty relieved because this is just with my lesson to myself. You think that everything's dead in January, and this is what you come up with. So this is the kind of product that the floral designers in Seattle are able to work with if they're really committed to local. And it's hard. I know if you have, you know, customers who come in and they want what they want when they want it. And so I'm not trying to be the preacher up here saying there's only one way to have it. These floral designers are trying to educate their customers and bring them along with the seasons. So all these beautiful colored twig dogwoods were grown in Oregon. There's a lot of pussy willow material, and then Dusty Miller and Artemisia. So here's not a January bouquet I did. That kind of seems appropriate, wintry. I had this mauve vase that I thought I was going to do this in, so I've got Dusty Miller, 2 types of Dusty Miller, Artemisia, and then the pussy willow. And then I photographed it, and I thought, oh, well, I wonder how it would look in other vases. So then I pulled everything out and did these 2 vases. And then I had a vote on my website for people to see what they like the best. I think this one won, actually. But, you know, that just shows you from a design point of view how different an arrangement can look when you change space. So here we have spring, and, you know, my garden is a lot of bulbs and a lot of forsythia. And here's a couple of arrangements I did. This is Pieris. Do you guys grow Pieris japonica? Yeah. I love that shrub for floral arranging. So I filled this vase with Pieris, and then I did buy these lilies from a grower in Oregon who does under glass. She grows Peter Court roses. They're in the book. They grow rose. I call them the last rose grower in Oregon. They have 16 greenhouses, and they grow hydroponic, beautiful hybrid teas. They also grow some lilies. Just on the upper right, this is from my garden. I'm not really happy with this arrangement, but I just threw it in here to show the options of, you know, there's euphorbia, and there's the forsythia, the early daffodils, and a little bit of fancy leaf scented geranium that was under the grow light in my garage. Or something as simple as cut hyacinth bulbs. You know, honestly, they don't need to be arranged. Putting the twine around them and throwing them in the space was all they needed. But I'm lucky that where I live, there is a bulb grower who's organic up by the Canadian border, actually, in Bellingham, Alm Hill, and they grow tulips year-round organically, and they sell them at the high-price market year-round because they're able to kind of freeze the bulbs and then grow them, you know, when you wouldn't expect bulbs to be grown. Another gifted arrangement, my friend Maureen had cut the caria branches from her Meridian caria, and I just put them in a vase with some quince. So that's a winter, spring, early spring arrangement. Something like this, though, you put it in water and you forget about it and it starts to bloom. An arrangement by one of my young floral farmer designer friends, Kelly Sullivan. I was telling Sophie about Kelly yesterday. You remind me of her. She's just so can-do, and she's a floral designer who's also started a cutting garden and she's doing subscription bouquets. So like your CSA, Kelly has people who get a bouquet from her each week. And this was probably in early April. She had an anemone that she had bought from a farmer who was growing them in greenhouses. But the grape hyacinth and the pulmonaria, which is kind of a shade plant, and then the geranium leaves and the daphne were all from the garden. amazing. These are dahlias grown in Corleos by Kevin Larkin. He profiled as a 50-mile bouquet. This is his field, cutting fields, and some of his flowers. And the dahlias here were donated by Kevin for us to use. Robin hauled them up in his van. Have any of you been down there or bought from Kevin? Corleos, they're known for selling dahlia cuttings that are rooted, and so it's kind of bypassing the tuber stage, and so they can ship these cuttings all over the country. But he has a couple acres that he sets aside to grow dahlias for the summer bridal market, and people come from as far away, 50 miles or so to buy them. And I'll just mention one more thing. We went to photograph this when we followed Julie Chai from Sunset Magazine to gather the dahlias for her wedding last summer. So there's some wonderful photos in the book about that. So this obviously summer gives us a lot more to work with. This is one of those growers at the farm that's featured on the front of the book. And look at these amazing garden roses that they're growing. Her name is Jessica, and sunflowers. You pick farms. I'm not even going to tell you what you're saying because you know all this. There's you pick farms everywhere, and people are doing their own wedding bouquets. And this is sort of the next big thing that I'm noticing with flower farms is that they're not just selling floral designers. They're hosting wedding parties that want the bride, the groom, the wedding party, the parents. They all want to come and pick flowers and make their own bouquets. And well, some of the people might say, well, that's cutting the florist out of the mix. The farmers I know say, look, there's certain people who are only going to work with the florist, and there's certain people who want to do it themselves. Let's make them all happy. This was something very similar. Michael Marriott, who's the head of, he's the head of rose development for David Austin Roses in England. His daughter was getting married in Seattle, and he came over, his family came over for the wedding, and I said, oh, I'll help you guys with the flowers. So the daughter was very kind of granola-y. She wanted, just very simple cottage garden flowers. She wanted yarrow, she wanted nigella, she wanted Queen Anne's lace, and then Michael had all these amazing David Austin cut roses shipped in. They were grown in Northern California, and we made these bouquets. So that was pretty fun. And these on the right were designed by Baylor Chapman of Lila Bee, who's here in San Francisco. She's featured in the book. She's one of those innovative florists who decided she wanted to start growing her own ingredients because she wanted more diversity. So she has a cutting garden in a parking lot in the Mission District, well, Dog Patch, I guess is the area. And there's some great photos in the book of, like these chain link fence with barbed wire, and she's growing. She's like 150 15-gallon black plastic pots that you would get from the nursery, after you got a tree or something. They're all on drip, and so she's growing really interesting ingredients. So this is kind of that same cafe au lait palette for this wedding. She had dahlia, she had this Dusty Miller, and a lot of like little grasses and pods that are sweet. So fall, of course, I think also is a kind of a perfect time to do floral design. This is an arrangement I did with the very last Cafe au lait dahlias that Diane had last fall. When she gave them to me, they were past beyond selling. And you know how you do something and then like the next day all the petals fall off? That's what this was. But it was perfect for, they call that, when the florists say, oh, it's good for event work. And that's like a code for it can last one day. So keep that in mind. The roses are from this grower in Oregon, Peter Court, and they do hybrid teas, but these are Cortis roses, which are hybrid teas that have been bred to almost look like Old English roses. And so they have multi-petal, they're smaller heads, but they're really beautiful. And they were little, kind of my little sparkly fall bouquet. And then I had, just maple branches and rose hips, and then a lot of the growers on the West Coast, also especially Oregon, Washington, they're doing a lot of amaranthus and millet and getting that kind of cool seed head look, and you see that in there too. And then of course, I really hate ornamental kale. I'm kind of sick of it, but it's out there, and it is, have you seen the ornamental kale where they're kind of cutting all the outer leaves to make it look like a rose? So I said, okay, I know you hate it. Push your boundaries, Deborah. Let's see what you can do. And I actually was pretty pleased with this tricolored sage. I thought that was kind of a good way to cut all the sage back in my garden. I had to do it anyway, and put it with the kale. Another thing I love are these. Seed has Japanese anemone. And you guys have Japanese anemone. You can grow that here. It is not a happy cut flower. Sadly. I love it. I love its whole wispy personality, but they don't like being in the vase. But when the petals fall off, the seed heads are pretty nifty. And they're fine in the vase because they're pretty practically drying out. So I do a lot of workshops with garden clubs where we say, Debra will bring some local flowers from local farmers, and everybody else bring what you have in your garden. And you all can do this with your friends, you don't need me to do this. And so we did this workshop in October at my friend Kathy Freeze's house. And this is the kind of stuff that people came up with hops, hydrangeas that were still looking good, 9-bark physocarpus, and I thought that's pretty stunning. Oh, and some fancy geraniums. Here's some other stuff. I think the coolest thing is when you get this many people, like the 20 people or whatever, and you would say, here's this universe of ingredients, and every single arrangement is so different, because it's such an opportunity for personal expression. Okay, I'm gonna go faster, sorry. All right, we're done. I didn't realize I was going so long on it. So define local on your own terms. And this is something that Sophie and I were talking about yesterday. Local, sustainable, those topics, or those terms mean so many different things to so many people. So it's okay. In fact, I got somebody, I arrived at the Ruth Bancroft Garden office yesterday with a few things from Washington State in my arms that I brought. And I'll show them to you later, but I immediately got scolded by someone who said, those aren't 50 miles. Those flowers aren't 50 miles away. I said, yeah, but I have them in my lap on the plane. So. This is the most current government definition of local. And you can see that it's really geared toward food. It's, the product has to be transported less than 400 miles from its place of origin or where it was grown, or within the state in which the product is produced. Of course, in California, it would be more than 400 miles and still be in the state, same Washington. But there's lots of ways to define local. Of course, your own garden, the wild gathered by the side of the road or sidewalk, foraging, or going into Carol's garden with the clippers this morning and cutting foliage, buying direct from the farmer, picking it yourself at a new pick, or ordering from a farm 1 state away or 2 states away. This is what I'm doing. I'm getting product from Oregon when I can't get it from Washington. I'm working on a big project. In 2 weeks, I will be in Alaska documenting the cut peony industry there. And that's certainly not 50 miles, but that's a vibrant, growing, domestic cut flower industry in a state that, really is all about fish and oil. So it's great to see them growing flowers. And so I'd rather support the Alaska peony farmers than to see peonies being flown into New Zealand. So, those are all, that's the continuum. No Life Farmer, this is another way to be local. Here's Julie Chai from Sunset Magazine, one of my good pals, and of course you all recognize her from the magazine and the online videos. And she befriends farmers. She befriended Kevin from Corralitos. She befriended Robin Stockwell and got him involved in her wedding too, contributing some, you gifted her a lot of beautiful stuff to that.
Yeah, she writes that one, so.
Yeah, it's give and take, and that's and she wanted to. So last winter, February of 2011, she was at a dinner party at my house. She came up to San Francisco, or came up to the Seattle Flower Show, and she's like, "Oh yeah, George and I are going to get married in July, and I'm going to do all my own bouquets." And David Carey, the photographer, was there too. And we're like, "Well, we're coming, and you can't take no for an answer, or we can't." So she she propagated a lot of succulents herself, mainly for her party favors, to give to people in little glass pots. And then she worked with Kevin to custom grow 300 dahlias in her color palette. She gave him her palette of mostly corals and peaches and pinks. And then she grew a lot of perennials in the Sunset Test Garden. So she gathered from all those places to do her bouquets. Here she is the day before the wedding making her bouquet. And there's the wedding at sunset. And Amy Matchek, who's the recipe editor, did the cake and then used all of the dahlias on the cake. Okay, so that's local. So think about local, how it fits for you. And then understanding what sustainability means. This is a moving target in the floral trade. Because it's very hard to be organic. It's very hard to be certified organic as a flower farmer. There are a lot of floral designers who try to buy organic ingredient, and then if they only want to buy organic ingredient, then sometimes they're forced to import flowers rather than buy something local. So it's all these questions you have to ask yourself. These are some of the definitions from growers that we featured in the book. But basically, the summation is let's not take more out of the land, and let's not leave it depleted. Let's improve the land we're growing on rather than ruining it. And I love this little sign, we compost all floral cuttings. It's just a subtle little thing, but a flower shop in Portland has this at their counter, and it's just sending a message to customers that we're not just throwing this in the garbage. We're trying to be thoughtful about it. And I'll tell you about the chickens in a minute. Here's just some of the practices that growers are doing. This Salmon Safe is a Northwest third-party certification program that flower farmers in Oregon and Washington are now using, so that they have some independent evaluation of their practices. So they can say to their customers, be it like a retail grocery store or a florist, we've met this certification. It doesn't mean they're organic, but they're trying to move in that way with their irrigation practices. They're using organic fertilizers rather than synthetic fertilizers and that sort of thing. Because he sells at a couple of the farmers markets in Seattle, but he ships his amazing alliums all over the country. You've got to see these alliums that I brought with me yesterday. These drumstick alliums from Jan. I'm going to pass these around. They're amazing, and he's got all kinds of really great ones. But I couldn't resist bringing these with me. I bought them from him the other day. And they're really durable in vase because but he grows all kinds of them. And so he ships down. Alliums are really shippable. So if he can sell to florists all over the country in just flat boxes, and they do really well. But I like buying them direct from the farmer's market. Here's a bouquet I did after visiting Jan a couple summers ago with this the Aramiris, the foxtail lily, and then the Alley Below Master. But there are other kinds of unusual, smaller alliums like here that I put in there as well. So I love to know the farmers. And this is a florist I know in Chicago. Her name is Lynn Fossbender, and she has a shop or a studio called Pollen is her business. And she's like a lot like the gal in Toronto. She can really only do local half of the year. So here's like what she would do in the summer and what she would do in the fall. She adds fruit and dried hydrangeas and that sort of thing. But Lynn has started the Chicago Green